Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. So let me introduce myself. My name is Hugo de Oliveira. I am a PhD student at the Swiss Plasma Center in the city of Lausanne here in Switzerland. And today I will present you the newly built diagnostic that we have at the TCV Tokamak. So the Tokamak we have in Lausanne is a medium-sized machine with a major radius of about 1 meter, a toroidal field of 1.5 Tesla, and plasma current of up to 500 kiloamps. Here is a video of our campus with the Tokamak building and finally the TCV zone. Inside the Tokamak, you can see all the graphite tiles, and this right plot here is an illustration of the unique magnetic shaping capabilities of the Tokamak with a snowflake plasma as an example. When we perform experiments, our team is focused on the boundary measurements, so where the plasma is colder. We often use Langmuir probes. We have an upstream fast scanning probe that gives us upstream profile, and at the targets, we have wall embedded probes. So we are able to build such profiles of upstream and downstream data. You can see here that the electron temperature decreases from upstream to downstream. The whole issue is that ideally, we would like to have a measurement at all the points in the divertor. We would like to have a measurement, a 2D measurement, in order to understand where the transition occurs. And the fact that TCV has such a large open divertor, due to the elongated vessel, it's an opportunity for us to cover this region with an array of Langmuir probes. Now, in order to be able to build a diagnostic in such a challenging environment, in the divertor of TCV, there are many constraints that come along, and we will go through a few of the most important constraints. First of all, we need to decide what type of motion we want for the diagnostic. We prefer the vertical motion rather than the rotational motion and the horizontal motion. Among all the different probe head choices that we could come up with, the reason being that a rotational motion cannot cover the X-point region. An horizontal motion cannot give data near the target. Only the vertical motion can give data from the target up to the X-point. And another advantage is that depending on how high is the plasma, with a vertical motion, we can adjust the plunge height. So in order to have a vertical motion, we need to have a vertical access under the machine. And you can see here the top view of the vacuum vessel with a few of the available ports. Most of the ports are not available because there are structural bars below the vessel that block the way. But this port was available, and you can see here that with the available diameter, we have about 150 millimeters of radial range. On top of this, below the vessel, there are toroidal coils, and those clearly constrain the available space for any system below it in this small V shape. So given this radial range, we came up with this design, an L shape. So the horizontal part of the L shape is actually hosting the Langmuir tips. So the array of tips on the horizontal part combined with the vertical motion is giving us the 2D profile. And meanwhile, the vertical part on the left of the arm remains hidden. So here we have the core plasma, then the scrape-off layer plasma, so the plasma in the divertor, and none of the vertical part is actually in the scrape-off layer plasma. It's hiding in this region, therefore minimizing the perturbation. However, there is still some level of perturbation, and one way to quantify this level of perturbation is to calculate the fraction of field lines that are intercepted by the probe body. So let me explain this in more detail. When we follow a feed line, we start the feed lines from the source, where we believe the heat source and the particle source is, so near the upstream point, and then we follow feed lines downwards until they touch the floor. And you can see here that only a small fraction of the feed line will actually land on the probe body here. This fraction percentage is represented here as a function of the radial coordinate of the equilibrium, magnetic equilibrium. You can see here that it's about 15% for the blue case, and then goes down to 0 once the field line is has exited the probe flux surface, the last flux surface in contact with the probe. For 3 different probe heights, so the vertical dimension of 10, 30, and 50 millimeter, you can see here that the shadowing fraction is linear, and it goes from 5 to 15 and then 25%. Therefore, if we want to remain at a reasonable level, let's say around 10%, we need to have a probe in the range of 20 to 30 millimeter of vertical extent. Another constraint is impurity. In a tokamak, we don't want too many impurities to be released in the main plasma. In order to do this, first of all, we use a refractory material, which is graphite, similar to all the TCV tile. And then we must ensure that the temperature at the surface of the graphite remains below the onset of radiation-enhanced thermal sublimation, which is about 2200 Kelvin. So obviously, the surface temperature is a function of applied heat flux, exposition time, and it's a function of the thickness of the carbon shield. So here, we have, for example, we have a simple simulation where we applied a heat flux of 30 megawatt per meter squared during 0.3 seconds on a carbon shield of 3 millimeters of thickness. The result is, as you can see here, the temperature at the surface starts from room temperature and then reach almost 2000 Kelvin. So now we just repeat this, this simulation with various plunge time and various graphite shield thicknesses. And you can see here that for the slowest plunge time, the surface temperature is always above 2200 Kelvin, no matter how thick the shield is. So we can have a first conclusion from this is that a fast plunge is mandatory. Secondly, in the range where we are interested here of a fast plunge, the shield, sorry, the shield must be at least 2.5 millimeter thick. And that's our design choice for the diagnostic, because we always want the probe component to be as compact as possible. Another challenge that comes from the TCV environment are off-normal events. For example, disruptions. All the plasma magnetic and thermal energies are released within a small time scale, which can be very dangerous, especially the current quench, because we have halo currents, that means electrical current that are within the structure, within the metals, and those currents can lead to huge J cross B forces that can damage the structure. Therefore, we need to avoid those currents to flow in the probe, and we need to stop those current paths with electrical insulation. So now I will unveil the design and how the design is answering all the constraints we discussed before. First of all, the probe head. The probe head the L shape is made of titanium tubular hollow shape. This solid piece is very lightweight and tough at the same time, and it can host all of the cables. After that, the carbon and the boron nitride thermal shields are being slid in place, and those small parts are able to expand when there is a heat applied on them, and therefore the risk of cracking is reduced. We managed to reduce the vertical extent down to 26 millimeter, and we believe that it can hardly be lower than this dimension. So now a detail of the assembly. The probe tips have a so-called rooftop shape, with one side of the roof looking at the upstream plasma and one side of the room looking at the downstream plasma. In between the downstream and the upstream probe, there is a thin sheath of mica that insulates both sides. And then here we have a copper connection to the transmission line. The transmission line are hosted in this empty space along the horizontal part. And finally, on the sides, you have the graphite thermal shields that are slid in between those two rods. And in between them, there are some mica sheath as well for electrical insulation. With this video, you will be able to see it more clearly how the assembly is done. So first, the tips are assembled with the boron nitride cover. This assembly was done without cables for the purpose of simplicity for the video. And then the shields on the sides. Finally, both sides are being covered up with those graphite shield with screws. So the graphite heat shield are taking the parallel heat flux at a 90-degree angle. Therefore, they are taking all of the heat flux. On the contrary, the boron nitride shields take the magnetic field with a shallow angle. This is very nice because this enables to reduce thermal stress on the boron nitride shields that are a little bit weaker than the graphite shield. In order to avoid the halo current from disruption, the problem that we mentioned earlier, we decided to have two different layers of electrical insulation. The first layer of electrical insulation is between the metallic part, the L shape, and the rest of the tokamak. It is insulated through those three insulated screws. The second protection is the insulation between the thermal shield and the metallic structure. This insulation is done through those ceramic rods. And you can see here that the ceramic rods are the only contact point of the thermal shield to the structure. There is an empty space of about 1 millimeter here where the current cannot flow in the material. Thankfully, the diagnostic has survived more than 20 disruptions, and we are still counting up the number of events without any damage. The whole structure of the diagnostic is 4 meters high and is bolted down on the TCV concrete floor. There is no direct connection between the vacuum vessel of TCV and the structure. The reason being that we want to be able to tolerate a radial misalignment between the tokamak and the system. For example, when we bake the tokamak, the vessel can expand due to thermal expansion, and we want to allow such a small movement. However, a radial misalignment of more than 4 millimeters would not be tolerable because it would lead to excessive friction on the shaft during motion. The part of the diagnostic which is in the vacuum is shown here in a simplified sketch, where you can see that we share the vacuum with the tokamak, meaning that we rely on the tokamak turbo pumps to maintain the vacuum. This is done in order to save space, because we don't have space for an auxiliary system for vacuum. The motion is being guided by two separate bearings in the vacuum that are high melting point polymers. And the shaft is a tube, a stainless steel tube, hosting all the transmission lines in the vacuum, and at the end of the feed through, right at this position. The bellow compress and expand and enables to maintain the vacuum during motion. Outside the diagnostic, there is a plastic cover that prevents any accident, any worker to touch the part in motion. We try to minimize the footprint of diagnostic in order to have an easier access to the diagnostic and for future diagnostic. Before we installed all the motion system on the tokamak, we made a test bench in a building next to the tokamak building. And here is a slow motion video of a reciprocation. You can see here the bellow moving up and down. The same video in the vacuum. And within 1.1 second, we are able to make 3 motion of 0.4 meter, so a pretty long plunge. The motion system is ensured by a powerful linear electric motor that's giving us 4,000 Newton. Given the fact that we have 20 kilograms of moving components, we can easily guarantee the 100 meters per square second needed for the motion. That is about 10 G acceleration. The use of linear electric motor was inspired by the recent work of the team from Alcator CMOD, where they successfully used a servo motor. And actually, the big advantage of those servo motors over pneumatic system is less auxiliary system, a better precision. We can program arbitrary motion, and they are quite reliable and need less maintenance. The science of those motors is we have a stator. The static part is an alternating array of permanent dipoles. And the moving part is, actually holding the electromagnets that are commuting the current in order to align with the desired dipole. The magnetic system still works even in the ambient magnetic field of TCV because the current given by those permanent magnets is about 10 times stronger than the magnetic field from the tokamak in this region. However, if this motor would have been within the toroidal volume of the coils, it would not have worked. So it works because it's outside of the toroidal coils. The transmission line is made of high temperature resistant cables made from stainless steel jacket and ceramic powder insulation. Outside the vacuum, we have just 8 meters of standard coaxial lines. One of the main problem of this diagnostic is the assembly, which is quite tedious. So therefore, in a future design, the assembly of the cables should be made easier by a different process. The cables are then arrive finally to the cubicle, where the signal is digitized at 2 megahertz, and voltage are applied on the lines with custom-built amplifiers. Now, the result part. We are looking at a video from a spectral imaging in the divertor. So the core plasma is on the top. Here we have the X point, and the probe is making 2 plunges. You could see the characteristic shadow on the downstream plasma. So now I will play a second video at even in slower motion. So yeah, you can see the probe went from a very cold plasma to a hotter plasma near the X point, and there was a more intense amount of radiation of deuterium lines near the top of the plunge. Once we acquire those data, we are able to make those 2D plots using color to show the magnitude of the signal. So for the next slide, I will show those 2D plots with the aspect ratio being flattened in order to have more compact result. but you can see here that the probe range is actually much more elongated in the vertical direction. So first of all, the ion saturation current, which is one of the most direct measurements that you can get from Langmuir probes. You can see here that the ion saturation current profile is in agreement with wall embedded floor probes. On the downstream side, the current is about 2 times lower. And this translates to a Mach number of about 0.3 to 0.6, because being able to have the ratio between downstream and upstream measurements, we can calculate the Mach number. Another measurement characteristic from Langmuir probes is electron temperature. You can see here that the electron temperature near the X point is in fairly good agreement with Thomson electron scattering, and the electron temperature near the bottom of the plunge is in good agreement with wall embedded probes. So here we go from about 17 electron volts to about 26 electron volts. So therefore we are in attached conditions. Another quantity which is interesting is the fluctuation of density. So since we make acquisition at the megahertz range, we are able to resolve turbulence time scale, and we are able to plot the fluctuation level, such as the standard deviation of density divided by the mean density. You can see here that in a detached divertor, the fluctuation levels are much higher near the top of the plunge and then are a strong function of the poloidal position. In an attached plasma, this was not the case, where fluctuation levels were constant poloidally. An interesting result that came out from the analysis is that E-cross-B flow in attached plasma can strongly dominate heat and particle balance. I will try to explain you this observation. The E-cross-B velocity is calculated from the plasma potential map. Usually the E-cross-B velocity is much slower, and it's actually always much slower than the parallel velocity. However, when we project the E-cross-B velocity in the vertical plane, you can see that the contribution of E-cross-B flow is not negligible at all, and sometimes can dominate the contribution of parallel flow. So here, for the parallel flow, we can go up to 1.5 10 to the 22, while for the E-cross-B flow, we can go up to 4 times to 10 to the 22. The fact that E-cross-B flux sometimes dominates parallel and heat flux and particle transport it's not the first time it was discovered. Actually, people at D3D found this indirectly with Thomson measurement. However, here we have a direct measurement of it in the divertor of a major tokamak. Another sign of this domination of E-cross-B flux is the reversal of the parallel flux. Indeed, in this region of downward E-cross-B, the drift velocity is so strong that the parallel flux is actually negative, meaning going away from the target, which is quite interesting. Finally, this last result that I wanted to share with you is the confirmation of a negative potential in high-density reverse field experiment. So Mirko Wenzing and some other colleagues have performed Sol-PS simulation of the TCV divertor, including drifts, and they expected the appearance of a negative plasma potential in high density, which was later confirmed with the RDPA measurement only in the high density case. So to conclude, a new diagnostic has been built at TCV, providing Langmuir probe coverage of an unprecedented 2D probe measurement across the divertor. The engineering design answered the main constraints and challenges posed by the harsh environment in TCV. The physics results are consistent with other reference diagnostics for most plasma conditions. The first scientific studies performed highlight the dominant role of E-cross-B flows in attached plasma and the confirmation of negative potential well in high-density reverse field plasma. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I am looking forward to hearing your comments and questions.